All right, folks, I have a question for you. Did you ever imagine China would become this strong? Seriously. I mean, this is a country that only 3 decades ago was dirt poor, and now they're killing it in tech. They're killing it in manufacturing. They're even beating the US when it comes to electric cars. What happened? Stay tuned, because in this video, we're going to share the 7 biggest lessons we can all learn from China's rise. And I promise you that they can change the way you think about US investing. All right, let's go back in time. 3 decades ago, China was among the poorest nations on Earth. And I mean really poor. How poor? Well, let's just say it was hard for an American kid like me to even wrap my head around reading about it in books. But guess what? Within a few decades, China not only climbed to the top of ladder, they built their own ladder and started to run ahead of everyone today. They're no longer just an emerging market. They are competing with the US on tech industry and innovation. How did they do it? Let's talk about that. Here's the crazy part, right? Is there were 1.4 billion people in poverty in China, and now China is the number 2 economy in the world. How? By doing things no one expected when we in the US were still obsessed with industries of the past. China was leveling up in tech and manufacturing. And here's how boom. They don't just stop. They don't stop. You know, they're using their population. They got huge labor force and boom, they economic powerhouse. Mind-blowing, right? And now let's get to electric vehicles. For years, everybody was all about talking EVs, right? Tesla, the American innovators, the future of transportation, yada, yada, yada. But guess what? Well, China just showed up and blew everybody out of the water when it comes to cheap, good electric cars. BYD, a Chinese firm, is now the world leader in EVs. And while the US was busy trying to raise tariffs, China was able to sell a better, cheaper car in Europe, taking a huge piece of the market. I'm sorry, but did anyone else not get the memo on that one? Now, the part that gets interesting and sort of frustrating for US investors, the US imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, believing it would damage their economy. But here's the kicker. It's hurting US consumers and businesses more than anyone else. Chinese EVs are way cheaper than their American counterparts by a lot. And we know who's faring worse. You guessed it, us. Those tariffs so high and those same Chinese cars are much more expensive for US consumers, even as Europe's already riding around in them. So why is the US not playing the same game? Have we locked ourselves away from the competition of the world? Something to consider. Now let's get into the real secret sauce. How did China pull all of this off? Here's the thing. Though China made a deal with the world and they offered 2 things that were irresistible to foreign companies: cheap labor and a huge, constantly expanding consumer market. And so while America had an early lead on technology, China was acting like it. And businesses couldn't help but rush in and establish themselves there. Who wouldn't want to cash in on cheap manufacturing and a $78 billion and growing market every year? And the Chinese government knew exactly what they were doing. Here's a big takeaway for all those investors out there. China didn't simply replicate the West. They combined the best of both worlds, the capitalist motivation to make money and the government's ability to steer dominant industries. Where the US emphasizes a more free market, private sector-driven approach, China's government intervenes, pouring money into crucial sectors where the market would provide no immediate reward. They don't sit around waiting for profits to determine their strategy. Profits don't happen to rely on a future of investment. And guess what? It's working big time. However, the big question is, what does all of this mean for you as an investor in the US? The thing is, the US is great at focusing on short-term gains, and China's thinking big picture, really long-term. They figured out how to bet on things that don't look sexy now but will be electric vehicles, green energy, tech. And you know what? The US could learn plenty from this. Instead of waiting around for early returns, look into why emerging industries. You've got to think May 10th, 20 years ahead, because those are the ones that are going to train and build real winners. The bottom line, folks, is losing ground, and without a change in strategy, it'll be left in the dust. But here's the upside. It's not too late. If we begin investing with a China-like mentality, long-term, strategic, and forward-thinking, we can still catch up. So if you want to make your investment strategy a little smarter, think like China. Ask yourself the question, what can be done daily? What's going to rule the future? Get ahead or get lost? Thanks for tuning in. If you learned something from this, or at least a little enlightening. Today's episode. If this post had a like button, please give it a click. Subscribe for more insights and tell me in the comments, what's your take on China's rise? What lessons does the US need to be learning in this moment? I want to hear from you. Until next time, smart investing and keep your eyes on the future.